Hello and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Ayo Makinde here in Lagos.
Good morning from Abuja. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
Okay, now that I know the way you do it, I think I better just step up. Well, talking about stepping up, it would seem like the security operatives have also stepped up their activities along the Abuja-Kaduna highway. A joint team of security operatives led by the Kaduna State Commissioner Kaduna State Commissioner of Police, Mudashiru Abdullahi, visited the scene of Sunday's kidnapping incident on the Abuja-Kaduna highway to assess the situation. Take a look.
The quietest section of the Abuja-Kaduna highway, with vehicles traveling in peace. But just a little over 100 meters behind, the heavy presence of security forces raises eyebrows. In recent times, whenever they're sighted on this expressway, it usually is as a result of one reason: a recent attack by bandits. And indeed it is. On Sunday, gunmen commandeered the road and commenced their now regular activity of kidnapping commuters. Their mission was, however, disrupted by the police patrolling the area. The Commissioner of Police sheds more light from the report of his men.
These hoodlums came out around 4 and started firing sporadically on the computers. But fortunately enough, our men engaged them. Were able at least to rescue at least up to 11 victims. But I cannot ascertain the number of the commuters they kidnapped.
The incident, beyond the matter of kidnap, also recorded a loss of life in the person of a former governorship aspirant in Zamfara State. The Kaduna State government describes the attack as a setback.
We are sad with what happened. It's a setback, but like I explained, the security forces have assured us that they are going back to the drawing board, and there will be a lot of some changes here that we will not want to talk about it.
Such measures, as explained by the Garrison Commander 1 Mechanized Division, are discreet, but will be effective.
We are going to deploy a lot of technology. I will not want to, give details on the form of technology we'll deploy. We will deploy a lot of technology to assist the ground patrols, in terms of getting information and even taking action sometimes.
The strategy on containing the bandits will certainly be intensified as commuters ply the roads, praying that their journeys are undertaken without incident.
So far has government security agencies gone to ascertain what has happened so far, and as you have heard, we strategize to ensure that those things don't happen again. It's been quite a while since we've been hearing of incessant attacks on the Abuja-Kaduna highway, so much so that so many people don't even want to go using that route. So many people have lost lives and property as a result. One of the measures deployed by government was in January this year, when about 300 female soldiers, we heard, received by the governor of Kaduna State to man that particular highway. And up until now, in all of the clips that we just saw, I didn't notice one female soldier. Maybe I didn't see that. So what has happened to that one? Did we suddenly pull them out when they began to record successes? What exactly, excuse me, what exactly happened? One might want to find out. Then we also know that at some point there was a helicopter pad of sorts stationed on that road in the particular area that is notorious, the village that is notorious for harboring, so to speak. Maybe not necessarily harboring, but at least that's where the bandits usually set camp to do all of the activities that they do. That word notorious is quite rampant online if you check. So what has happened to all those ones? Are these part of the strategies that are just going to be ramped up, or we are looking at something completely new? Of course, you know, security agencies are not going to tell us, so that the bandits themselves or the criminals themselves don't take advantage of that and try to circumvent it. I can only hope that with all of the infrastructure, all of the investments on that highway, it will indeed serve the purpose of economic jumpstart as opposed to the death trap, the security risk that it is to the people. Government has its job cut out. Don't they, Mokwe?
Well, you can say that again. The primary purpose of government in any society is to provide for lives and security. I mean, to provide for the security of lives and property. That's the primary role of any government. So in this particular situation, it is worrisome. The Kaduna-Abuja road situation is very worrisome indeed. And in some instances, I mean, Abuja-Kaduna has been on the news for a long time now. As you rightly pointed out, early this year, it would seem that they found a solution with female soldiers being deployed. And we thought, oh, wow, what a solution. And we thought, okay, maybe that was going to, you know, be... I don't know if it was going to be long-term. The truth of the matter is, it would seem that most of the solutions that we're bringing up are mostly ad hoc. They are, in the interim, they are just sometimes knee-jerk, you know, something to just try and boost the confidence of people. And after a while, it dissipates. The energy is no longer there, or perhaps the funds are no longer there to keep these operations, to sustain these operations, so to speak. And so you find all manner of, you know, ad hoc measures here and there being put in place. So we're going to get another new set of ad hoc measures. Now, we're being told they're going to deploy technology. The technology that's going to be deployed is being held close to the chest of the military officers because of security, ostensibly because of security. Well, all well and good, as long as it works. I think that people are really being tired of being afraid to move around their own country. The fact that you just want to go Kaduna to Abuja is about 3 hours. By train is even less than. And now, where train was even considered safe, we've seen 1 or 2 attacks on the railway line, and then people are still wondering, you know, even though the train will still be working, what new measures have we put in place to reassure people that it is okay, it is safe for you to travel? I know that it's not easy. I mean, all you have to do is try and put yourself in the shoes of government officials. But hey, they begged to do this work. They begged to take on the work. So they shouldn't be tired. The Bible says as long as the hunter is not tired of taking aim, the bird must not be tired of flying. The bird cannot just settle in one place. Otherwise, you will just be, you know, meat for the hunter. And we cannot be meat for bandits. It's not possible that Nigerians will continue to be sitting ducks, you know, people who will be afraid to move in their own country, people who will be afraid to fly because, you know, of the security situation. It's very troubling, it's very worrisome. I'm hoping that, not just because this is a federal road we're talking about, the road between Abuja and Kaduna is a federal road. And if you were to think, even if we had state police manning, say, the Kaduna end, and maybe Abuja even had its own, there will still be like there needs to be an overarching, you know, coordinating place where these 2 agencies or these 2 security agencies will coordinate. Interestingly, we do not have. So it is primarily the responsibility of the federal government. I'm hoping that they put it very high on their priority list, especially as the Yuletide approaches and people will be traveling a lot in this season. Bandits need to be told where they belong and let the citizens of this country be able to exercise their right to freedom. Ayo.
Well, the president also, speaking about, you know, all of this criminality, said once that, look, let the criminals and the bandits not live in a fool's paradise. What we're waiting for now is action to buttress that. Because, I mean, if we go to the front pages of the papers, starting with the Daily Trust newspaper, for instance, it leads with the same story. Dozens still missing 2 days after Abuja-Kaduna road attack. That's what you have on this front page. Say, police say 11 rescued as bandits abduct more. Security agents in pursuit of assailants, according to the commissioner. How ex-Zamfara governorship aspirant was killed That's according to the driver. Many people aren't even talking about that particular one, but that's what you have on the front page of the paper this morning. Synergy key to ending attacks, as ascribed to an analyst. You may want to find out the details of that on the front page. The story is actually on page 5 of the paper this morning. The picture there on the front page also lays credence. Security agents inspecting late Alhaji Sagir Hamidu's vehicle along Abuja-Kaduna highway before it was towed to Katari Police Station. And of course, the blood-stained interior of the car is also inset in that picture. That's what you have on the front page, and it's definitely something very, very troublesome. Seems, as some people say, it is too close to home. Under the picture you see there, 2021 SSCE, mixed feelings as WAEC records 81.7% success rate. That's what you have on the front page. The story is on page 3 of the paper this morning. Mark.
Well, indeed, I'm sure that students who did well will be looking forward to seeing their results. And those who did not do so well, I guess that there will be worries on that end. But look at what leadership is also saying about the story on the Abuja-Kaduna road. Attacks on Abuja-Kaduna road, a national shame, says ACF. Bandits kill 4 in Katsina, 11 rescued in Kaduna. Bandit spiritual leader arrested in Niger. Insurgents, do they have just one spiritual leader? Is it just one? Is there one group of bandits and they're the ones terrorizing everywhere from Niger to Kaduna to Zamfara to Sokoto? Is it just one group of bandits, or I don't know? Because if it's just one group of bandits, we might as well give them a proper name and label them just what they are, terrorists. That's who they are. Because if people cannot travel for fear of losing their lives, then they have become terrorists. Look at this. Insurgents, bandits, fueling poverty. That's ascribed to PMB. Northern leaders lack courage to confront challenges. Ascribed to a coalition. You have a number of other stories here. Exhibitors hail Nexim Bank impact showing at Durban. And look at this. Still in the light of that, Wike to federal government consider oil theft as treason. Yes, so while we're dealing with loss of lives or loss of property in one part of the country, another part of the country is dealing with acts of sabotage to the country's major source of revenue. So this is what the governor of Rivers State is saying. Wike to federal government consider oil theft as treason. Fire raises 41 shops at Kano Market. And we also saw this yesterday, an obituary. Veteran comic actor Babasuwe passes on. May he so rest in peace. Amen. It's a page 6 read for you. Let's leave it there for leadership, yes. Leadership newspapers.
Newspaper is interested in EndSARS this morning. EndSARS panel report. I was attacked, cut like a thief. As ascribed to a witness. That's the Vanguard newspaper this morning. It's on its front page. Stories on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. Adeburua SAN, another witness alleged threat to life. Lawyers, PDP, APC, CSOs react as Lagos state government keeps mum on attacks. Human rights violators will be dealt with on both sides. As ascribed to presidency. All of that you have on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. It will be good to hear what the Lagos State government has to say about this twist to the EndSARS panel report. So far, according to this paper, nothing has been said. I guess we'll wait. Direct primaries. National Assembly expects Buhari to sign Electoral Act Amendment bill. That's ascribed to the President of the Senate, Lawan. Find the details on page 8. Mr. and Mrs. very quickly. Mr. is sitting at table and says, "What do you mean?" Well, talking to Mrs. off camera. "What do you mean that's enough? Can't I eat in my house again? Come and give me another plate of jollof rice. Food is like a drug when the body is weak. And Mrs. replies off camera, as I said, another plate will make it the 6th. That's drug abuse. Markwe.
Well, Mr. should get his synonyms right. When he says food is like a drug, then indeed Mrs. is right. A 6th plate, that's certainly drug abuse. Well, let's take a look at Nigerian Tribune now. They have this one for you. Not all governors against direct primary. That's according to the Senate President. Explains why NAS expects Buhari to assent to Electoral Act Amendment bill. It's a page 22 read for you. Yesterday, the Senate President went to visit the President, and obviously it was around matters of the newly amended Electoral Act Amendment bill, which is now being sent to the office of the President. And it was saying that Senate President and the Speaker of the House have taken it upon themselves to lobby very strongly that the President signs this into law, despite some of the contentious issues. What we hear wasn't alone, that the governors too went to visit the President as well. We're not privy to the inner workings of the conversation, but this is what we have out. Not all governors against direct primary. That's according to the Senate President. 3 siblings among dozens feared dead in Rivers waterfront fire. So they're still counting casualties from that fire which broke over the weekend. And look at this. Senate uncovers 16 billion naira tucked in 2022 budget. Under what heading was it tucked? We need to know that. You might want to read details on page 5. Are they going to bring the agency that tucked it, or at least carry out an investigation into those who tucked 22 billion naira, more or less like hid it under something, so that money can be appropriated for and then spent for something that was obviously phantom? I don't know. You might want to read details somewhere inside the Nigerian Tribune today. A number of other stories. EndSARS panel. Government lawyers weeping more than the bereaved. That's according to Falano. You have the EndSARS protesters who testified before Lagos panel attacked. That's according to the council. Hold government responsible if anything happens to me. That's from Adigborua. Areas that affect federal government will be addressed. That's from the presidency. Adamawa panel submit report to Finteri. So a few other panels are still sitting and submitting their reports as well. Let's leave it there for the Nigerian Tribune.
The part you talked about there, Markwe, about Senate uncovering 16 billion naira tucked in 2022 budget, only raises a question in me. What happened to all the discoveries that have been unearthed, untucked, if I can use that term, from the Auditor General's reports over the years? Senate and the House of Representatives, the National Assembly, they need to do something to give teeth to that Auditor General's report. Otherwise, where exactly do we want to begin from? Daily Independent this morning is interested in Electoral Act Amendment bill. And that's the lead there. Don't endanger your political future. APC governors warn AGF. What does this mean? Find the details on the front page, continues on the inside pages. A couple of riders to meet Buhari over direct primaries row. Party holds national convention February 2022. The details you'll find on the inside pages there. That picture there is of the African First Lady's Peace Mission with the President of Nigeria. Under the picture you see, insurers risk sanction for violating daily transactions upload. Find the details of that on the inside pages. VAT battle aimed at strengthening rule of law. The details are on page 7 of the Daily Independent this morning. And that's the Daily Independent today.
Well, New Telegraph has this, and I dare say that I have an interest in one of the stories on the front page this morning, but And I'll tell you about it in a moment. But look at this. COVID-19. Get vaccinated or lose your jobs, federal government tells workers. Sets December 1 deadline. Says unvaccinated a threat to others. That's what the New Telegraph has on the front page. And we've still not been told whether there have been creative ideas in terms of getting people vaccinated. For instance, they have mini setups at the secretariat to ensure that people do not have to leave the office to go to hospitals. I know that there are a few clinics in one or two secretariats in the federal secretariat here in Abuja. And I would like to imagine that they would have, vaccination points in those areas. But for the places that do not have, federal government parastatals that do not have that, will they set up there for members of staff, for instance? That's the question. It's a page 3 read. Get vaccinated or lose your jobs. Federal government tells workers. Sets December 1 deadline. Says unvaccinated are threats to others. Take a look at this. Kaduna Abuja Highway. How bandits killed them for APC Guba hopeful. Kidnapped scores. So they're also trailing that story for you. Senate uncovers 16 billion naira fraud. It's in parentheses there. In Ministry's 2022 budget, as federal government moves to plant 692 million trees in northern Nigeria. Okay, I know we're part of the Great Green Wall Project, and there'll be questions as to how many trees we've planted so far. But in case you want details, you might want to flip to page 3 of the paper. Now, for this story, which I told you I had an interest in, look at it. Okowa to federal government. Address rising cost of cooking gas. Backs One United Nigeria. The story is on pages 3 and 29. I'm sure a lot of Nigerian women will certainly root for this. And when you look at the implications, the fact that when people can no longer afford cooking gas, they have to now go to unclean sources of energy, such as fuel, such as firewood, things that could endanger their lives in the long run. It's what a lot of rural women still use. And I know that there's been a drive to try and get rural women out of this. But when cooking gas costs what it currently costs, and the cost has jumped by close to 100% in the last how many months, then one would think that will be something that will be of priority to the federal government, something that it should at least speak up on, to say we're aware of this problem and this is what we're going to do about it. So I very much believe that the call of the Delta State government is very much in order this morning. Pages 3 and 29 will give you details. Oil theft thrives because military, police, others are involved. That's from the governor of Rivers State, Wike. It's a page 3 read. You also have other stories there. Pension operators paid up share capital hits 40.29 billion naira. 8 PFAs meet 5 billion naira recapitalization target. So that story is also there on page 3. Let's leave it there for New Telegraph.
Expand that conversation on cooking gas, Malkwe, to restaurateurs all over the country. I mean, if you're spending 100% more on your fuel for cooking, just guess what's going to happen to the price of food at the restaurants. The Guardian newspaper this morning is interested in APC. Boni gets 3 months. Buhari Oke's February convention. That's the detail. That's the story you have on the front page. I'm not jobless. Boni dismisses plan to extend CEC-PC tenure. Presidency in dilemma over direct primary. APC governors insist on indirect primaries. Ball in president's court, says Lawan. That's the Guardian newspaper this morning.
A very interesting story there from, excuse me, from Nobel laureates Wole Soyinka. But take a look at Daily Independent. Okay, I think we've already taken a look at that. News Direct, Nigerian News Direct has this. APC National Convention, Northern Caucus scrambles for chairmanship slot as Buhari Oke's February 2022 for convention. Caretaker Extraordinary Committee, illegal aberration of Nigerian Constitution. That's according to IPAC chairman. APC to scout next presidential candidates from South. That's from Ogunrinade. That's what you find on the front page of the paper. 21-story building collapse. Probe panel calls for public submission of memoranda. And you also see this child trafficking. Police rescue 2 newborn babies in Ebonyi. ICPC arraigns Gwagwalada Council chairman over 10 million naira fraud. You know, when you read some stories, you can immediately relate. The Guardian has Wole Soyinka saying something has happened to us. We need our humanity back. When you read this story, child trafficking, police rescue 2 newborn babies in Ebonyi, you have to ask, you know, who traffics new babies, brand new babies? Who are those who engage in this sort of thing? Did they really carry the children? I mean, what sort of condition forces you to sell your own child? Or are the children stolen? What sort of situation forces you to steal brand new babies? I don't get it. Let's leave it there for Nigerian News Direct.
It definitely isn't something to sanely conjecture, Mokwe, but I guess I don't even know where to begin. Let's close the papers there with that particular one and take a short break, right after which we will take on the issues for the day. Do stay with us.
At the inception of the 9th Assembly, the Senate and House of Representatives promised to amend the country's electoral laws. There was a previous attempt by the 8th Assembly to amend the Electoral Act before the 2019 general elections. However, President Buhari refused to sign the bill into law on the premise that it was close to the 2019 general elections. Many Nigerians have yearned for the passage of this critical bill, hoping that it can sanitize the country's electoral system persistently plagued by violence, ballot box snatching, underage voting and cash for votes. The Senate and House committees on INEC began working on the legislation, requesting input from organizations and individuals on the bill. Public hearings were held and views collated. On July 15, 2021, the National Assembly passed the Electoral Act Amendment Bill on the final day of plenary before it proceeded on its annual recess. Days before the passage, reports swept the country of plans to expunge a clause from the bill which guaranteed electronic transmission of results, a critical aspect of elections. The Senate amended Clause 52, which gives INEC the discretion to introduce electronic voting as may be practicable.
The Commission may consider electronic transmission of results provided the national coverage is adjudged to be adequate and secure by the National Communication Commission (NCC) and approved by the National Assembly.
Clause 52(3) as amended by Senator Basi Akpan. Say aye. Those against say nay. The nays have it.
This amendment sharply split lawmakers, and the minority leader called for a division, the first in the 9th Assembly.
Mr. President, I still insist. We want Nigerians to know who has voted or not.
28.
The votes were cast and counted, and the majority voted to amend Clause 52 by empowering the NCC to determine the use of electronic means to transmit election results.
I vote no, just to allow INEC to do the best job for Nigeria. Thank you.
Mr. President, I stand on the side of the people, of Nigerians. I vote yes.
I categorically vote no against the amendment by distinguished Senator Albert.
Yes to electronic transmission of results, because that is what Nigerians want.
28 voted yes, those that supported the amendment. 52 senators voted no, they don't want the amendment. 28 of our colleagues, senators, are absent in different parts of the country doing some jobs for the Senate and the National Assembly. Nobody abstained. Total 108.
Today in Nigeria, I don't know the coverage.
In the House of Representatives, Clause 52 of the amendment bill caused a rowdy session. However, the lower chamber finally amended Clause 52, empowering INEC to decide on the best means to transmit election results. But 3 months later, on October 12, 2021, the Senate made a U-turn and gave INEC free rein to determine the procedure of transmission of results during elections.
Subordinating the authority of INEC to NCC and even to the National Assembly, to the Senate, approval was a violation of the ground norm, and that is the Constitution.
The Senate also re-amended Clause 87, prescribing direct primaries for political parties. On November 9, 2021, the National Assembly passed the harmonized version of the Electoral Act Amendment bill, empowering INEC to determine the procedure for voting and transmission of results during an election. It also approved direct primaries for aspirants to all elective positions. The adoption of the conference report marks the completion of the amendment of the Electoral Act bill in the 9th Assembly. Going forward, the bill is to be transmitted to President Buhari with the expectation that he will give his assent early enough to allow INEC and political parties prepare for the 2023 general elections.
So many battles on that bill, and it has all gone to the final front of the battle, which is the president's table. The last time, people are, there are those who are still wondering why the president didn't sign the bill into law as passed by the 8th Assembly. And they're wondering, is the same fate going to befall this one? Well, I guess time will tell, because now it seems there is no controversy whatsoever in the National Assembly, but outside of it, is the president or the presidency also as conflicted? I guess time will tell. But in the meantime, conversations have been going on, and everyone, there are those who are in favor of the bill being signed as is, and there are those who are saying the president should withhold his assent to the bill for one reason or another. Well, let's have a conversation around this morning. Ezenwa Nwagu joins us. He is Chairman, Partners for Electoral Reform, convener, Say No campaign, and board member, Civil Society Situation Room. He joins us virtually from Oka. Thanks for joining us this morning, Mr. Nwagu, as well as the Chairman, House Committee on Media in the House of Representatives, Honorable Benjamin Kalu. We do not have him yet, but I'm pretty sure that he will join us in the conversation. So, Mr. Nwagu, let us begin with you. Now, all of these controversies and all of these conversations going on around this, we have won several battles, it will seem, around this bill, and this is where we are now. What are your thoughts on the raging controversies, and in which way do you see the pendulum swinging?
Well, thank you for having me, and good morning. I think that the pendulum will swing on the side of the Nigerian people. The conflicting situation that you see is working in the favor of those who look to electoral integrity, who look to the expanding of the political space, who look to the strengthening of the Independent National Electoral Commission, and creating enabling environment for free, fair, and credible elections. The National Assembly has, through the legislative treadmill, provided a bill that, looking at it broadly, you will see that if that bill is passed, there are gains that already have been, that will have made, and will not be able to reverse those gains if the president assents to the bill. One of those will be, and we had made the argument before now, that one of the ways to stem and ensure that the president does not rescind assenting to the bill will have been to embed the Office of the Attorney General and the Minister of Justice in the committee processes and the public hearings, so that if there are I's that needs to be dotted, T's that needs to be crossed, that will have been done before it gets to the president, because the challenge actually has always been this advice. Well, you know that also that what is playing is also big, and it's time to alert Nigerians that the conflict between members of the National Assembly and the governors may be part of what we need to confront. And the reason for that is that we seem to be thinking that there's a do-gooder National Assembly that wants direct primaries, for instance. By direct primaries, we know that the space will be opened up. We know that we will take away negative godfatherism. We know that deep pockets will no longer be able to control party primaries and machinery. But the National Assembly is playing a survival game, as some of them who were governors before, who used cronyism and patronage to cause the kind of disaffection that you have Nigerians give to indirect primary, are sitting in the National Assembly and hoping that the pills that they serve people will not be served to them. The attrition rates in the National Assembly has been pretty very low because of the activities of the governors. And these governors are sitting, some of them are there sitting in the National Assembly, who made sure that people did not come back to the National Assembly by excluding them, taking away the funds, and using the delegate system to oppress them. So that fight between the governors has now taken place. I think the media, the civil society need to focus on something that we work to the expanding of the democratic space, and I think that key for that to happen. The financial independence of INEC. Before now, we have a situation in which, yes, INEC is independent, but it grows cap in hand from the National Assembly to the Ministry of Finance to get monies appropriated to it on the first line charge released, sometimes 2 months, sometimes 3 months to election time. And then the vendors who are not paid, contractors who need to do things early enough, and some other preparations for elections we then create an emergency. When we create that emergency, corruption becomes very close. So if this bill is passed, with the INEC fund that is contemplated, monies for election and preparation for elections will have been given to INEC 1 year before the election. And then we will not have these perennial issues of logistic challenges and punctuality, low punctuality index that we continue to have in our elections. The third one will be the enhancement of electoral and election integrity through technology. The transmission of election results will inarguably increase the trust level for our elections. When there is a balancing, cross-checking with the manual, which the beavers, which the electoral transmission of results guarantees, more confidence will be reposed in the fact, and legitimacy will increase for those who govern, because at that point in time it will be clear that they won those elections and that the will of the people actually played out. So for me, it's our responsibility to ask the president to do the needful, to on this time, ensure that these things that Nigerian people, irrespective of politics
Well, I really hope that we'll be able to have a fun conversation given the low bandwidth from your end. But on that last issue that you raised on transmission of results, there are those who are still wondering. It seems that the whole process is still largely manual, despite the introduction of electronic transmission of the results. some forms still need to be signed, filled manually, signed manually, and a snapshot taken and sent electronically. So in terms of how manual the process still is, do you see it as an inhibition, or you see it as something that we should just take what we have for now and over time we will evolve?
Thank you. I'm hoping that you can hear me very well. But I think that basically what needs to happen is that we can't surrender our electoral process to technology. There is nowhere that happens. We will have to have a dual situation in which both manual run side by side with technology. Why you see you are crying over increase in technology, which is the way we should go. It has more to do with trust deficiency in the whole process. The idea behind INEC continued interest in improving technology and use of technology to but it does not take away, because at the end of the day, you know the challenges of technology. You know that if you go to court at times, you still need that paper trail to be able to follow through some of these issues. If we solely depend on technology, we can have a situation in which things are wiped out. You may not be able to have a back end, all of those terminologies that are used to confuse people like us who are not very technologically savvy. The challenge, therefore, is that whether here or outside, even in the US, in Germany, they are still manual, but we need to go to technology, especially in this area now where we can cross-check. Now people in any part of the world can see the results as they are posted into the portal. And once that result comes into the portal, the paper alteration becomes very difficult. So for me, generally, there is no confusion about going to go side by side with the manual.
Okay, well, the conversation we can expand now. We have the spokesperson, chairman of House Committee on Media, Honorable Benjamin Kalu, joining us as well. Thanks for joining us this morning. So many conflicts, it would seem, going on and on about this yeoman's job that some are praising and some are faulting. How is the House taking this on board? Honorable Kalu, can you hear me? Well, I'm not very sure he can hear me. I'm pretty sure we'll get around that. So, Mr. Wagu, still on that mode of transmission of results, clause 63 on counting of votes and forms, subsection 5 says in the amended clause says, the presiding officer shall transfer the results, including total number of accredited voters and the results of the ballot, in a manner as prescribed by the Commission. If the Commission, for instance, prescribes that the forms shall be electronic forms, is it allowed in the law, or it has to be paper, as you have said?
Well, if this amendment goes through, then the electronic will be continued. But if it is not amended, as the law stands now, you cannot, still is not admissible. So the intention of that piece of legislation is that the INEC has the responsibility to conduct elections and prescribe whatever ways it thinks should be used. And INEC, I think, understands that you cannot, like I said, you will not abandon the process completely to technology. You still have to manualize the process if that's in which. But for me, like I said, if we get to that point where we can reduce manual intervention in our electoral process, the better for us. because what you have seen is that elections have shifted away from INEC to the polling units. And that is why we see vote for money is getting more and more traction because you no longer need to compromise electoral officials to like you used to see in the past. Now, everything you do has to be in the polling unit. And that's why we said collation is the weakest link in the electoral process. So if we tighten up that area through a cross-checking methodology, a methodology that can help us cross-check what has come from the paper, and then there's a technological, an electronic process that helps us to confirm this and gives everybody the confidence that what happens in the polling unit is what has been taken to the collation center. Then more and more confidence will continue to, people will get inspired, and more people will trust the process, and then some of these conversations about low voter turnouts may begin to change.
Very interesting part there where you talk about the weakest link being the mode of the collation. Well, we'll get to that, I hope. Honorable Benjamin Kalu, I hope we have you now, his spokesman for House of Representatives. Now, all of the conflicts and conversations going on about this bill that the National Assembly has passed, a lot of for and against. How is the National Assembly taking it?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, and apologies for the breaking network the last time I tried to join. The National Assembly, how we are taking it is what we expected this. We expected the kind of reactions that we are getting at the moment, where some will be for it and some will be against it, just like any other piece of legislation. But if you do your statistics well, you will find out that those who are for it are greater than those who are against it. And that is what democracy is all about. If it is for the people, then greater number of people, majority of number of people queuing behind it shows that it is a people-oriented piece of legislation. So we are not worried with what is happening. It shows that our democracy is getting healthier by the day. And we feel that consultations going on, lobbying going on at the presidency is not also out of place. But it depends on whether or not the presidency will align with the few, a handful of people, as against the majority of people who are saying we need to advance our democracy from where it is to where it ought to be, if not completely, at least closer to what it ought to be. If you recall, we had this issue when it was a PIB. There was a lot of agitation as well. So it's not only Electoral Act. A lot of people ventilated their opinion on these issues. And at the end of the day, PIB is today PIA. And I can assure you as well that Mr. President is looking at the opinion of the National Assembly because he respects the separation of powers. And the National Assembly is not wavering on our position that what is healthy for our democracy is to begin to strengthen it the way it ought to be. If there are issues, like people always say, we need to amend this and amend that. If you remember, the PIB went into the president, and after passage, few days after that, an amendment came up. We are battling with a calendar, electoral calendar that we need to meet up with. So if there are issues that people have, go ahead, note those issues, follow the legislative process, speak to your representatives, so that by the time it goes for the president to assent to it and it comes back, just like the PIB, if there's an amendment, it will be accommodated by the House. But INEC need to move on. A lot of planning is involved for the 2023 election. We're almost in 2022, and we're talking about laws that will be able to guide the planning of the coming election. Our suggestion is no law is cast on stone. if the public have the good number to amend a piece of legislation, they should do so using the right platform, and it will be tolerated. But now we need to move on. We really have to move on. I don't think the dissenting opinion with regards to clause 52 that everybody's talking about, that you just discussed with my colleague there, and also 87, that is the major thing that people are talking about. And I think for me, it's very healthy, in strengthening our democracy. So that's how we see it. We see that it's not cast on stone. We see that it's still a room for us to amend if the need arises, but we must move on. And we're encouraging Mr. President to move on. And I'm sure that Mr. President is also looking at what is before him and consulting the National Assembly, to get their opinion on that.
Well, while we wait, while we wait to see which way the president will swing with his pen, there also talk around how this is going to be implemented. And I have this question for Mr. Ezenwago, who I believe is still with us. Honorable, I'll come to you shortly. And I think for a number of people, while the words of the amendment bill are, impressive and in some instances commendable, there are worries about the people who would operate the Electoral Act Amendment bill, who will eventually operate the Electoral Act as signed. Because when you look at what transpired in Anambra, first, the major worry around Anambra was the security situation, which was totally out of the control of the Electoral Act. That's one. And then when you look at the deployment of logistics, which boil down again to people, there will be questions as to, in that sort of situation, is there any provision? Because it would seem that law alone will not be able to cure all. How would you advise that we proceed when we look at some of the challenges that we have recently encountered from the elections in Anambra, especially when it comes to deploying manpower and logistics? And this is for Mr. Wago.
Well, if you can hear me, I think that I hinted around that when the conversation started. I made the point that first, this Electoral Act is the most amended piece of legislation since our return to democracy. And sometimes I make a joke that we need to have an audit to see how much it has cost us to always amend this piece of legislation. Having said that, there's a lot of work beyond the law. The first is the issue around internal party democracy. We talk about primaries and all the benefits that comes from it. But the parties will still screen the candidates. If they screen the candidates, if they don't present you to contest in the direct primaries, you are not going to contest. So the folks who do the screening and those who control them will still be, the law is not dealing with that. So there needs to be a question around party administration, party organization, and administration. That's a conversation that needs to take place differently away from the one that we're having now. Because the process that takes you to be an aspirant or a candidate of a political party can still be made in the confusion and crisis that we want to run away from. That's for the political parties.
Well, let's quickly pause there, because it would seem that you've also separated the two issues. I mean, you've separated the conduct of elections from the internal workings of political parties. We'll take a bit more on both the elections and the internal workings of political parties when we come back from this break. Please stay with us. Well, we're still talking about the Electoral Act Amendment bill as it awaits the president's assent. Yes, it's been sent to the president, and we understand he has about 27 days or so to decide whether or not he will pen his signature to it. And there's been lobbying from both members of the National Assembly and governors as well. So a lot of politics going on around the villa as we speak. But we have two guests with us here this morning, Mr. Ezenwa Wago, who's the chairman partners for electoral reform, and also Honorable Benjamin Kalu, who's the chairman House Committee on Media, to discuss some of the issues around the Electoral Act Amendment bill. And just before we went on break, Mr. Wago, I was speaking to you about the people who are going to operate this Electoral Act Amendment bill, about how there has been commendation. However, when we look at what we had with the recently concluded election in Anambra, and when we look at the bill, imperfect as it was what came into play, INEC was able to do what it needed to do within that. But when you look at the challenges which were outside the construct of the bill, which were outside the, which were, will I say, beyond the Electoral Act itself, to the environment and to the people who are going to operate it. So, for instance, you had transporters who were afraid for their lives and who, a few times asked for more than they would normally charge to be able to transport materials. When you look at the fact that ad hoc staff who had been trained prior to the elections couldn't carry out the assignments for which they had been trained, because according to INEC, some of them, their parents came to pick them away from that place, and they had to train people on the spot on the same day that the elections were going to be carried out. These are some of the challenges that we face in conducting a successful election. What are your thoughts on some of the things that can be done to mitigate some of the challenges we have encountered, which could also very well be challenges that we'll encounter in forthcoming elections, especially in the general elections?
Well, there are none of these challenges is new. Let's logical challenge that we come to face 2019, even up to the challenges. What needs to happen is a thinking around it. For instance, we can't continue to depend on the road transport workers who have continually reneged on the contract that they entered into with INEC. So what needs to happen is to go above them and find reputable transport organizations that exist in the country, who have fleets of vehicles. And then if they, through an open, transparent bid process, if they are not able to make that, can form a consortium of transport companies who can do this assignment. Remember that before we started using ad hoc staff for elections, we had INEC officials who profited and made a bazaar of every elections. We started thinking around it, and then conduct of election would have sourced to university teachers and corps members. If there are new challenges that is coming with that, it is for us to continue to think about whether we now will have a register of observers, those who have, a register of ad hoc staff, people who have done this work before creditably. We can have a pool from which we can be drawing consistently for those who will want to apply, who have done this work before, who have experience, and who can be used. So the whole challenge that we face, none of them, whether it is in Anambra or anywhere, if you remember in 2013, Idemili North and Idemili South and Uruba, there are new years that we have in Anambra today. So this challenge but the human capacity to solve problems is what we need to pick in when we have challenges. And that is why you need an electoral commission that is forward-looking. And I'm sometimes part of the reason why I'm very restrained in criticizing INEC is because I see an INEC that is always working to overcome these challenges. But what then happens is that we see them still relying on the same people who pay. For the security agencies, for instance, there was no reason why you could have 34,000 policemen, 20,000 NSDC, state security service, and then we still postpone the election in Anambra. The reason why that happens is because our service delivery outcomes have no consequence. If people derelict on their duties, there are no consequences, there are no sanctions. We paper over it and everybody moves on. What we need to do is, after every election, there should be an election audit. That audit should be public so that Maokwe and Channels TV and all of us who showed a lot of enthusiasm in this election can have an idea of what happened, and a thinking around how to overcome the challenges that we faced can now be put in place. But once we have any election, we paper over the challenges that we have and wait until a new challenge throws up itself, and then we begin to lament. So we can get away from complaining to being solution-minded. How do we solve the problems? I was talking about the political parties, that they also constitute 60% of the candidates that we have in our electoral process. By the direct, indirect primaries now, we are going to create a new level of power for those who will be screening candidates. You see, so we have solved one problem. We are now going to be dealing with another one. A new power block with the two parties who will lobby to be in the screening committees, because by then they will have the power of, in quote, life and death over who will run election. So what will happen is more and more conscientization, more and more civic education, more and more engagement with the different stakeholders to be able to expand and expand the conversations way that bat the kind of elections that we're looking forward to having in 2023 and beyond.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wago. Let me quickly come to Honorable Kalu now. I'm sure that you've listened to Mr. Wago, and I'm sure that you're also beginning to picture perhaps some of the challenges that could come up. Yes, it is true that the Electoral Act, as currently passed by the National Assembly, has a lot of good points. But when we think of, say, for instance, how how will I put it now? The Electoral Act, as currently passed, was not even the one that was used in the Anambra election. It was the imperfect, there's no perfect law, but it was the one yet to be amended which came to play in the Anambra elections. When you think of what happened within your own party in Anambra State, the internal politics which rocked the APC within Anambra State, and the fact that people said, oh, but direct primaries was what came to play in Anambra, and we saw humongous figures as the number of people who actually elected the candidate for the party. However, that number, they still did not come up for the elections itself. I mean, that number did not show up at the elections. There are huge questions as to whether this direct primaries, which the National Assembly says is the way to go, is truly the way to go.
Maugbe, I must appreciate you for highlighting that what happened in Anambra State was not from the Electoral Act that we are discussing at the moment. Probably they were doing a mock trial there, but having said so, the issue you raised, which others have also raised frequently, has been the issue of the number gotten from the primaries during direct primaries as against the number of votes at the end of the election. And this is my answer to that. When you go through your primaries and you get high number of votes for you to emerge, it does not mean that if you do nothing in sustaining those loyal voters, that they will vote for you in the general election. I use myself as an example. I emerged through direct primaries. And during that direct primaries, it was my party that voted for me. The same thing happened to my opponent, who was voted by his party. But during the elections, his party members voted for me, and other party members voted for me. So he got less from what the number that voted for him during the primaries, and I got more. So what is my point? My point is that if you emerge during direct primaries, that is not the end of the game. You need to sustain your activities, and your manifesto must be clear to the people. If not, a lot of people will abandon you between the primaries and the general election. So it would be wrong for somebody to stand and say, because you got 300,000 during your direct primaries, the general election you got less. The question should be,
I don't know if you
happened?
can hear me. Can you hear me, Honorable Kalu? Oh, good.
Clearly.
Thank you. When people raise when they raise that number, and when they pointed out that particular difference between the number of people who voted, who allegedly, and I think it's important to use that phrase now, or that word, allegedly voted in the primaries, as against the number of people who actually voted in an election where technology was deployed. Do you really think that we can go with the figure that came out of a direct primaries where there was no technology deployed, as against that? Because some people will say that that again comes down to human operators. We're talking about 200,000 people plus, vis-a-vis, say, about 50,000 people who voted for your party in an election. That disparity is quite outstanding. You don't agree?
Like I've said, the disparity will be there on two grounds. Some people, after voting for you during your primaries, may not be there, might develop an apathy between the time they voted for you and the general election. That is one. Two, they might switch camp with their votes. Yes, we granted that we voted for you during your primaries, but between your primaries and the general election, we've seen this is the direction we want to go. And you've seen most party members voting against their party. So it's not a good ground.
So you do not smell any
conclude.
foul play, if I'm getting you correctly. You do not smell any foul play in the figures. Because for a number of people, they will say those figures look like they would have been manipulated.
Until they are audited, it would be wrong to make an assumption that there was a foul play. Like my colleague there said, there should be an audit after every election. And the same thing goes for the political parties. They should do an audit at the end of the day. And until there is an audit on what actually transpired, it would be wrong to make that assumption that the people who handled it inflated the number of votes for a particular candidate. So I would not accept that my political party did something that was out of the books at this point, until the result of any audit is carried out. In fact, you've raised a very important issue through this conversation, that an audit is supposed to be done. What really happened? How did we get that number? How come that the number we were getting in the general election, what happened? So we'll be able to figure it out. But my experience, like what I just used to explain previously, people who voted for other candidates switch camp and voted for me during my general election. And it doesn't mean that those who voted for them during their primaries, that it was an inflated figure, because some of them got less than the number that voted for them during their primaries. And because they gave me that vote. Does that make their own primaries to be without credibility? The answer is no. It's just that you need to push your manifesto. You need to do the legwork. You don't sit and wait for magic to happen after your primaries. You don't wait. It's not that the 4,000 people that will do the election, that 4,000 people that came as security that will do the election. You still need to go to house. You still need to convince the people. You still need to sell yourself. If you fail to do that because you have grabbed the ruling party's ticket, you are making a mistake. So people will leave you and go to where they have a stronger message, a stronger conviction, a philosophy that they believe that is workable. So that is what I think. So we'll call for the audit if need be to know what exactly happened. Yeah.
Well, it will be very interesting, Honorable Kalu, to find out what that audit would say if a political party had elections where the total vote cast, one political party, total vote cast was 348,490 in one election, and we find out that in the total election of all the political parties and all of the states and the people who voted in that election, all of it came to what? 253,388? Do you see that audit happening, Honorable Kalu?
If the people call for it, if the political parties call for it, because the political party have, if they call for it, it will happen. Why won't it happen? That is why we are trying to return the power to the people. You see, the beauty of this Electoral Act Amendment bill that we are talking about, it cannot be overemphasized. It cures some of these issues that all of us are raising today. Returning power, there is nothing as beautiful as returning power to the people in a democratic system. You cannot claim to be practicing democracy when the power still resides in the hands of the party lords and all the rest of them. We must return it to the people. If we return it to the people, people will be asking the right questions. People will be asking for the right explanations. And if they are not there, they will query it at the moment. It is not there. So that is why this Electoral Act Amendment bill should be supported by everyone to become an act in no distance time. Yeah, I see it happening if people ask for it. But remember, we are still operating in the old act. The one we are proposing now is the innovation that is found in this new Electoral Act that will advance our democracy forward. And I know you agree with me that it will advance our democracy, despite the challenges. I know you agree with me that it will advance our democracy forward.
Well, Mr. Nwagu, do you agree with Honorable Kalu? Because, I mean, those figures are, I don't know. What do you make of it? Just a quick analysis of that, of this bill that this proposition that we are talking about in the light of the issues just raised.
I think Honorable Kalu is right to an extent. But the bigger challenge which we have not asked is most of the people who came to vote in that primaries, do they have voters cards? I have had to train a political party in a state, and when I got to the hall that the training was supposed to hold, it was so unwieldy. So I had to ask them to help me.
Oh, sincerely, I sincerely hope that we'll be able to get a better conversation around this matter, Mr. Nwagu. But the network hasn't done justice to your eloquence this morning. But for now, we have to thank you very much for your partnership in having this conversation with us. Chairman of Partners for Electoral Reform, convener Seno Campaign, and board member Civil Society Situation Room, Ezenwa Nwagu, as well as Honorable Benjamin Kalu, spokesman, House of Representatives, and the Chairman, House Committee on Media. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation this morning.
Thank you very much.
Okay. A very quick break to lay a foundation for the next conversation. It's around EndSARS. Do stay with us. Professor Paul Ananaba joins us this morning. He's a senior advocate of Nigeria to look at these issues and all the issues around it. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
It's 7 days before the release of the white paper of the Lagos EndSARS panel report and on Lekki Tollgate and sundry other issues. What are your expectations? Of course, you know that there's been a lot of contestation, so to speak, on either side, depending on whose side you are. What are your thoughts on those, and what are your expectations?
The first point is, before I even get to the real issues, I'm disturbed by the fact that a report whose white paper has not been released is already been made a subject of warfare. I mean, in the media, you know, it doesn't show we are a serious-minded people. It doesn't show that. We can only deal with and discuss official documents in public. I don't know where those who are making accusations and counter-accusations got the reliable facts based on which arguments are going on. You know,
so you don't think it's the official report?
No, I hear about leaked reports on the media, in the media, and all that. Why should that happen? A report has been submitted to government. Everybody should wait for the white paper. 7 days to go. Yes, we spent over a year, and we've not done 7 days. We're already, bouncing on these things. So the first point I want to make is that until the white paper is released, we can only do what you have asked me now. What are our expectations?
You don't think the contestations are valid, given the historical trajectory where we are coming from?
Yeah,
there have been several panels, judicial panels.
As far as I'm concerned, we are not coming from anywhere. If we continue to do things the way we used to do, then we don't intend to make progress.
But there have been reports that they were never leaked. The white papers were never released. The reports themselves were never released. And no action was ever taken on them.
Those stand on their own too. But I'm talking about a report that had just been submitted, particularly in Lagos State, and the toll issue, Lagos State, Lekki toll, and it's being discussed. That's not correct.
You see,
if it is what we have carried on along from Oputa panel, Kombi panel, and all the other panel, it shouldn't be what we'll be talking about in 2021. It shouldn't be the same modus operandi. So we're not making progress. That's the point I'm making. So having made that point, what I go on to say is that in my native parlance, I am used to proverbs. So I like to talk with proverbs. It's not good to give a person palm fronts to carry, and you are still stepping on the palm front. We don't allow that in my community. You give a person the palm front and allow him to carry the palm front. And what am I trying to say? The whole process is taking time, taking money, proceedings. The report should be made known and implemented. And if anybody felt that it wasn't going, whatever comes out will not be used, there was no point using taxpayers' money. There will be no point setting up the panels. The panels, you will remember, came in to assist the society to wait for a better result than what led to the riots or to the protests. Now, having waited 1 year, like in Lagos, in some states, some of the reports have been submitted way back July or even earlier. Some of these state governments have not released the reports. So we should be a people that should be serious-minded in what we do, and not set up a panel, and you set up a panel, and the result, and the white paper doesn't come out. So, if there is any panel report that never saw the light of the day, it won't be the EndSARS, because there was some ray of hope that once the process started, the SARS was, abolished. There was SWOT and all that. That gave many of us hope that, oh, there is a chance of a new thing. So that hope must continue. The government must keep that hope going by making public what the panels have come up with and implementing them. And I want to make this point that, remember, there are panels. They are not courts, even though manned mostly by retired judges and very senior and eminent lawyers. They are still panel reports that will require government to release white paper and implementation. But having even said that, we expect that many people who have come to these panels to relate what would have happened to them, those things, steps should be taken to ensure that those things don't happen again. And if we don't get to that level, it would have been a wasted exercise.
Prof, the challenge here that a number of people are looking at is, look, there is this saying that you know what someone will do by what the person has done before. That perhaps is the reason for the skepticism. I'm trying not to use the word distrust. Skepticism around whether or not the report will be released, whether or not action will be taken, whether or not, anything valid will come out of it. Don't forget that, but even before this leaked report, began to make the rounds, there has been a lot of statements made by government officials saying, look, it was a massacre without bodies. In other words, there was no massacre whatsoever. There's been a lot of denials about some of these things. And so when this report came out, it was sounding to a number of people like, we have been vindicated. And of course, the people who are crying foul have been largely government officials, essentially saying it's like the government officials are trying to make this whole thing go away like nothing ever happened. Meanwhile, as far as those people who think some things happened are concerned, things really did happen and government needs to unearth it.
Thank you. I share those sentiments. I understand. I'm a Nigerian. I've never lived outside Nigeria, so I understand those points. But the point I'm making is that the Nigerian society must be progressive. We should not allow that to happen. And that's part of what you've done now, bringing it to the consciousness of Nigerians that, yes, 7 days away for Lagos, particularly the Lekki toll gate, because I can't talk about all the panels. As part of practice, my firm has represented gone to some of these panels to make presentations. And what you're saying cannot be dismissed. Okay, remember there are financial components, compensation, part of what the panel report who will pay the money? Is it the federal government? Is it the state? So that's why we need to drum it to government, both at the state and federal levels. I said, listen, the reports must be made public in the white paper. Those who have been awarded some form of compensation should be paid. The citizens should not be left with arguing against us or trying to find a way. Those compensations should be made. And I was happy with, particularly the Lagos panel, I think, at some point, handed over some checks to some victims. And that was fine. It gave a lot of credibility. And particularly Lagos panel was, the composition had some very eminent people. And you can be sure that they will hit the nail on the head. We can't expect less. I'm not saying the report myself, but we can't expect less. And whatever it is, when the white paper comes, we will now know whether the panel did their work, really, as we have expected, or whether the government has the will to implement what it had put in place. You can imagine how much it would have cost the government.
Certainly.
When we say government, it looks as if it's government's money. There's some money called government's money. That money is my tax, your tax, and all that.
Okay. Well, my apologies, Prof. I mean, we need to take a short break. But when you say, when the report comes out, a counsel to the Lagos State government had come and said, and argued, I mean, you also probably saw that one, argued, hugely on it, looking at the findings, looking at the evidences as opposed to the findings and recommendations and all of that. But we'll unpack all of that when we return from this break. Do stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Professor Nanaba is still with us. Just before I flip to Abuja, Prof, there has been reports of late that some of the people who testified at the panels, they are claiming that they have been attacked. The front page of the Vanguard newspaper this morning, for instance, made that explicitly clear. And there are those who are saying this Lagos State government needs to come out and at least say something. Is there any kind of profession, any kind of protection in law for those who testify at panels such as this?
Well, generally speaking, panels are not regular legal.
Yes, courts. You said
courts,
it the other time.
And so witness protection laws are bound. It will also extend to panels, really, particularly judicial panels. The difference is not that, but the point is, why will a panel set up by a state not have, as part of conception of the panel, because it will receive evidence, particularly against security agents, why will it not be part of the setting up of the panel? I don't think any serious-minded panel will be set up. Anybody will set up a serious-minded panel without looking into protection of witnesses. It is basic. So if there has been those allegations, and as we see them, I'm happy that the police is still central today. We have not even gone to state police. It then means that the federal government, the Inspector General of Police, has a duty at this stage to investigate those attacks. And then if it is traceable to anybody, then the law should be made to take its full force. If it's traceable to the states, then we know that the citizens have their rights. And the point to make at this point is that both at the federal and state governments, efforts should be made to avert anything that looks like the EndSARS protest. It shouldn't come back. The citizens should not be pushed to a point where they say, what is all this? And so going to attack witnesses, then what do you want to achieve?
Do you see that consequence?
It is campaign after election, because the reports have been already, and I can tell you that most of the proceedings were recorded. Are you going to doctor the recordings or what? So that is not even the way to go. I want to assume that that will be investigated and then a report come up. But the spinal cord is a white paper on the report. So Nigerians will know what happened. You were talking about people attacking a report. How can you attack a report that is not public? It's unprofessional, it's unethical.
No, they're not attacking the one that is published. They're attacking the one that has been leaked.
That's the point. That's why that's not been published. That's what I'm saying. If you're attacking...
But I think there's a lot of proof. So, for instance, the counsel to the state government was here and also said, look, he has it on good authority that to a large extent that report represents is very, very close, at least 98% close.
I will say no more than saying that I'm surprised that could happen.
What could happen?
That a comment will be made about, oh, I've seen this, I've seen that. What do you have seen? Then there will be no need for the white paper. So such person should proceed and publish what he has seen to Nigerians so that we know that that is the authority to get information.
Okay.
Impunity has become, it's already becoming so elevated in this country. Why?
Okay. Markwe?
I don't even know where to start with the questioning. I have a few questions. In Lagos, the Lagos Judicial Panel's report, everyone knew it was going to be quite contentious as a result of the Lekki shootings, which happened on the 20th of October last year. And it would seem that that particular component, because the terms of the Judicial Panel was now expanded to include that investigation much later. I think it was done on the 21st of October last year. And that has now made, it would seem that that's now the most singular, important or differentiating item of the Lagos Judicial Panel report. Now, do you think that there ought to be another investigation, perhaps at the federal level, considering the fact that the agencies that were involved were alleged to have carried out the shooting on the night of the 20th were federal government agencies?
No, but thank you. I don't think so, because if you look at the Supreme Court's position on Togun's case, which is what we call the Oputa panel, you cannot do so. The federal government has no jurisdiction to set up a panel in a state. It can only set up a panel in the FCT. That was why the Oputa panel was, lost weight, so to speak. So the federal government cannot set up any panel further. What the Inspector General of Police can investigate, and that's a different thing entirely. But as for panels, commissions of inquiry, that can only be done by the state. And that's why the states, each state, virtually all the states set up panel on this issue of EndSARS. I don't see a better panel you can set up than what Lagos State did. The quality of persons that were in that panel was can be respected. So what we need is to see.
I guess
what we need is to see.
I have to rephrase that. Perhaps what I had in mind is not exactly a panel, but I think you already mentioned that the Inspector General of Police can, start an inquisition, because there has to be some internal investigation amongst the security agencies. You don't think that is important as well?
No, it is. That's part of our. We ought to have passed this level of long time. There should be, in a vehicle, that's what they call distributor. In engine components, I'm not a mechanical engineer. There should be a clearing point in our security and agencies network. You have seen a situation where one agency counters another agency. There is no clearing, and that has affected investigation and prosecutions. So basically, Section 2 and 4 of the Constitution is clear. The Inspector General of Police should, if he feels that it's important, investigate. But if it gets into a judicial panel, it can only be done by the states.
Okay, now the panel report is out. It has been submitted by the judicial, by the panel of inquiry. Justice Okuwobi and other members of the panel have since submitted their report. And now we're counting down to the time frame in which the Lagos State government says it's going to release a white paper. You have also asked that the Lagos State government publishes the report as submitted by the panel. But now we hear that lawyers are saying there is no law compelling the Lagos State government to publish the report. How important is this particular aspect? Publishing the report, well, the white paper is another instrument. However, that singular component of publishing the report, how important is this, whether or not there is a law?
Well, There are academic arguments that I will not be willing to do. When someone says there is no law compelling Lagos State government to publish reports, he will win the argument and lose the people. Argument, yes, you have won the argument, but you have lost the people. And I'm a proponent of the theory that law must not ignore culture. And that's why you will build many footbridges, and people will not climb those footbridges. Even when though they will see people, vehicles knocking down other people, because their culture first needs to change. Their culture is to cross the road. So if you put a zebra crossing and traffic light, enforcement will be a lot easier. But let me move on to the point you were raising. Nobody compared Lagos State government to say, this is when we will release a white paper and then possibly the report. And a government must be held accountable to what it tells its citizens. So I'm not going to go into those legal arguments or fantastic arguments as to whether they can be compared. Nobody's going to compare. The Lagos State government has led in many things positive in this country. I have tremendous respect to for the governor and particularly the Ministry of Justice, the Attorney General. These are great Nigerians, and they didn't need any compulsion to tell Lagosians, we will publish this report. So I want us to leave the point there, that they are going to do what they've told us they will do. Those who want to argue that there's no law compelling them, I'm not going to be part of that because lives were lost, properties were lost. There was so much crisis and commotion during that period. It got international attention. And now someone will come to say, well, they cannot be compared. What else will compel a government? Even the life of one citizen in this country is important to bring a closure to what actually happened in the EndSARS protest. What actually happened in Lekki at the Lekki toll gate. There should be a closure. There should be governance. And I dare say that government must govern. Leadership must lead. And the way to lead is to lead from the front. The way to lead is to lead to win the confidence of Nigerians that when if there is any need tomorrow and that a panel is going to be set up, Nigerians will say, our panels have always produced good results. If you cannot compel government to release report and then panels were only to be set up just to distract Nigerians or distract people, when there is another protest, nobody will be interested in any panel. Those panels come in to help moderate society. So if you now say that they are not worth anything, if you announce tomorrow that when there's a demonstration or protest that they are going to set up, and the people say it's not worth anything. So let's not reduce governance to that point. That's why I commend the Lagos State government on its own, winning back the confidence of Nigerians to say, we will do this. And I believe that they will do what they have said.
Dr. Nanaba, very weighty implications for non-publishing or the non-publication of that particular report, if that is how, if Lagos, we sincerely hope that that's not what they choose, considering the implications of what you have already laid out. But, you know, they have said they're going to release a white paper in 7 days, and we'll wait. However, in the waiting period, yes, you have said that you will not comment on the leaked report because it is unethical. However, we cannot ignore it. The public is already they're already in possession of the leaked report. People have already drawn their conclusions, and right now it would seem that people are also alleging that their lives are at risk. Only yesterday we heard from a senior advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Ebon Oluwadigboruwa, who says that if anything should happen to him, you know, we should hold the Lagos State government responsible. We also heard from a group which also said that someone who testified at that EndSARS panel, while he was sitting, that she was brutally attacked. And we've seen pictures, very gory pictures. And there have been allegations that, you know, other members of the, not of the panel, but those who testified, you know, their lives are under threat. These are grievous allegations. What is the expectation, in the light of these allegations, what do you expect, or how do you expect the Lagos State government to react?
All right, I will expect that the Lagos State government will issue a brief statement on those points, assuring Lagosians, and in line with what they've started doing of saying, we will publish a report. They will also proceed with ensuring that the Commissioner of Police Lagos State investigates these allegations, because they are very heavy. Why is it that the green passport, our Nigerians are disrespected in some countries? It is because of all these things. The way we manage ourselves. In sane environments, we don't hear this, that because you've served in a panel, your life will be in danger. So in the next panels you set up, will angels be brought to, or spirits? You know? So we should ensure that governance has integrity. So I would expect the Lagos State government to make a statement on it, assure Lagosians, because this is the most stable state in Nigeria to my mind. And Lagos must not, this kind of news cannot come in Lagos. There is a special protection unit of the police, all the people that and all that. The special protection unit should come in, the police should come in, ensure that people who witnesses, panel members are protected, ensure nothing happens to them, ensure the integrity of the report by the state government is upheld. I still take it, and I urge Nigerians to take it, that all those leaked reports are not a report. Okay. That the real report will come in 7 days. Okay. Let's not invent our own reports, because it has a way of diluting the effect of the report. So that people will start saying, oh, is it the real one or is it not the real one? The real report will come in 7 days. Let's be patient.
Well, since we don't have so much time, I'm not going to go into, you know, the arguments around that one, but just this one last one. The federal government is also looking, so to speak, to this report. And when we hosted Mr. Femi Adesina yesterday, said, look, the issues that concern the federal government will be addressed as they concern the federal government. Given the level of distrust, how hopeful or confident are you that whatever government at any level takes will assuage the feelings of the people?
Yeah, the hope I have is that we can still trust our government. I know that there are issues, and that any sane government, any government that loves its citizens, will not do anything to a report or to the findings of the issues that relate to EndSARS, because it relates mostly to the youth. And the confidence of the youth and the generality of Nigerians cannot be something that can be toyed with. I don't expect the government to do any of the things that are negatively being bandied around. I believe that the government will take it very seriously and reassure the youth of this country. Elections are also around the corner. It is the same youth you are going to go to say, vote for us. Let me tell you, let me close by this. You know, in the 70s, when I was in primary school, up to secondary school, we were told, health for all, 2000. School for all, education for all, everything for all, 2000. By some set of people who were youth, who say, okay, all the policies were in our best interest. Go on, austerity measures, all that. I have grown to a full adult, became a lawyer, nearly 10 years as a senior advocate of Nigeria, almost 10 years. There are still promises and promises, none have been achieved. So we cannot continue the way we were.
Okay.
We have to change the gears.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have to thank you very much for being here this morning, Professor Paul Ananaba, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Thank you for your perspectives.
Thank you.
Just before we go, your own contribution to the program this morning. We begin with Professor Chris Enakena's comment on EndSARS. And it says, most NGOs and CSOs must work assiduously to unveil the ills that pervade the country, which still houses the poorest people on earth. Political instabilities, pernicious corruption, political bandits, and the theatrics of embellished political irresponsibility and crookedness. Oh, wow.
Certainly a prof writing. Well, look at this one. Olorun Loba Adeni talking about the Electoral Act Amendment. An election audit is any review conducted after polls for the purpose of determining whether the votes were counted accurately or whether proper procedures were followed, or both. I believe INEC has been doing this. That's from Olorun Loba Adeni.
Well, Henry Owuna knows on electoral reform says, I encourage INEC and the entire nation to be courageous to effect the desired changes through legislation and behavioral change. Post-activity audit, as espoused, should be inculcated into all our national programs and projects. If the observed challenges with beavers at the Anambra elections are diagnosed and treated, Nigeria will end up showcasing to the world an improved version of the technology. Let's move on. President Buhari, please append your signature.
And this one is on the attack on Kaduna-Abuja highway from Festus Akimboyewa. He said, sad that traveling by road in our country is no longer pleasurable, as bushes and forests adjoining our highways are now a den of kidnappers and all sorts of dangerous criminals. The recent kidnapping along Kaduna and Abuja highway indicates that effective security strategy has not been developed to address incessant kidnapping on that highway. Time to use technology for effective policing on our highways. Well, it's a fine place to leave it. Thank you so much for your thoughts and your contributions to the program this morning. We don't take it for granted. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful rest of your day.